Welcome, everyone, to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter. I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts at the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. And I split my time with the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development group that focuses on manuscripts within the context of the Kislak Center. We do a lot of digitization work, we do digital projects, but we also have physical collections on the stacks. And in Coffee with a Codex, once a week, I take a book off the shelf and we just do a 30-minute, very informal show and tell. So you can get a better look at some of our books. And as I go, if you want to ask questions, please put them in the chat. My colleague, Amy Hutchins, is here. Amy is our manuscripts cataloger. She knows these books better than I do. And she can answer questions. I'll answer questions as I see them. And I'm just going to show you this book. So what is this? So this book is a German 15th century collection of texts about astronomy and astrology. Now, it was not at all unusual to have astronomy and astrology together like this. We have a few other books in our collections that have this kind of text put together. It was all about the stars. And so everything about the stars, you can look at the stars in a sort of more scientific way and also in a less scientific way. But of course, they didn't really think about it like that. They were just looking at the stars and getting what they could out of them. So this is an example of that. So it's interesting for that reason. Another reason it's interesting is because it was written down after 1488. We know that it was written after 1488 because one of the books that's copied in here was published in 1488. So of course, we're in Germany. One of the things that happened in Germany during the 15th century was the rise of the printing press. So you had Johannes Gutenberg printing his great Bible, a lot of other books getting printed, but it wasn't that all of a sudden during the 15th century, people started printing books and stopped writing them. You had this period of 100 years or more where books were getting printed and then they were getting copied by hand and made into manuscripts. And also, of course, manuscripts were being written and made into books. So there was this, so this manuscript is an interesting example of that. In fact, there are three what we call incunables that we have identified, incunables being early printed books published in the first 50 years. So between 1450 and 1500 that are copied in here. And we'll look at those when we get to them. So written sometime after 1488 in Germany, possibly in Nuremberg, because Nuremberg is mentioned in here in a place where I will show you. The binding is pretty nice too, so I want to look at that. It is a late 15th century binding. That means that it is about what we say contemporary with the writing of the book. We don't know if it's actually the original binding, but it was made about the same time. It has these lovely wooden boards. It has pigskin around the spine with decorations that have been probably tooled in there, or maybe stamped. Tooling would be sort of made by hand, and the stamping obviously would be like stamped in. So that's what's happening here. The wood is in really good condition, so that's very nice. It also has this sort of strap coming around with a little buckle here, and it's really nice that survives, actually. So this is all quite nice there. So let's move on to the contents. Where is my camo? There we go. So here we have the book. So I'm going to open it up. Let's see. Nuremberg is mentioned on this document here. So it has this, the very first thing we see is this, what used to be a paste down So it's part of the binding that sort of helps hold it together. And it was originally pasted onto the wooden board, and we can see that because the imprint of the ink is still there, because when it was pasted in, the ink went on. But it's since come apart, so we don't have that any longer. And then we move on to, before the text actually starts, we have several pages of sort of drawings. And this is another thing that I think is really delightful about this book, because at some point, I think it's children. I don't know for a fact that a child drew these, but they look childlike to me. Some of our other books that, in fact, that we've looked at in Coffee with a Codex have what we know to be children's drawings in them, and they look like that. But we also have people coming in and doing pen trials and sort of testing, spilling ink, and then drawing little people into the spills. So this was all added sometime later, not too much later, probably later, 100 years. So that's just sort of fun. Anyway, these, you know, there was like a choir maybe at the start that was left blank. And so people came in and filled it in. And then finally, we get to the texts. And the first one, this is the text from that Heidelberg 1488 incunable. The text is, it's astrological predictions about the fate of the church, the Holy Roman Empire, and the laity. It was a text by Johannes Lichtenberger, who wrote in German, as I said, around this time. And so that's the first text here. It's written in a bastarda script, not, you know, hugely formal or decorative, but it does have these nice red initials as we go along, and a lot of rubrication. So that's what that first text is. Another thing I want to point out that makes it my job today a little bit easier than it sometimes is that there are these tabs on the side that note where the different texts start. Has anybody else lost the image? I have a note that someone has can't see it. Is that no, you can't see it, or no, you can?
I can see it fine.
Okay. Okay, I don't know what to tell you, iPad. I'm sorry.
It looks like iPad is back. So that
okay.
square was black too for a while. I think it's reconnected.
Okay, great. Yeah, just let me know if that happens again. I'm sorry. All right. But we've got these tabs on the side that note where the texts are, so I don't have to use my my paper tabs this time. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward because the first thing that we had then is astrological predictions. So using the stars to sort of try to predict the future. I don't know enough to know if he was right. You know, maybe not. I've never heard of him, so maybe he wasn't right. Now, the next thing we have is actually a copy of another incunable. This one is a German calendar by Johannes Regiomontanus, sorry. And this was published in Nuremberg in 1474. And so we can see here at the top, there is a chart. There's Borealia, which I think is the northern hemisphere, and Australia, that would be the south. And then we have, there's Libra, Scorpio, so the zodiac signs there. And then going through the calendar, and many times I have said to myself, I'm going to learn how to read these calendars, and I haven't, so I can't tell you exactly what is happening here, but it's clearly a sort of a calendar table there. And then we go on to the horizon, and there's more. One other interesting thing in this section is this diagram with a nice yellow wash behind it. And this is a quadrant of I think the horizon. So solar latitude, I think is what that says. And so we're looking at the sun rising like that. So that's sort of interesting. And then there's another diagram there on the back. And then the next section, the next tab is here. And this is another calendar specific to Augsburg. And unlike the previous calendar, which had these tables, this calendar is more like a calendar that you would see in a book of hours, in that you have January, and then you have the days of the month with the numbers down the sides. And there are probably, in a book of hours, you're going to see things like saints' days and holidays. I am guessing that since this is a sort of an astrological book, there's probably more to do with the zodiac in the calendar than that. But as I say, I haven't read it, so I don't know. There are probably still saints' days listed, though, because saints were, there wasn't, again, this sort of division between astrology and science and religion. It was all, and medicine. These things were all sort of considered together in a way that we don't do today. So here's February, and more of this, March. And some of it's left blank, so not every day gets an entry. But it does look like, well, maybe those are added. I was going to say it looks like it was all sort of written at the same time. But now that I'm looking, it looks like other people did come in and add to it later on. So June, so we go through the whole year here, October, November, and then we get to December. And then the next, and then we have a blank page again with some pen trials. There are not many pages in this book that were left blank. They were used. So this is interesting. We get to 97 recto, and it's another copy of Johannes Regiomontanus's German calendar. This one is copied from an incunable that was published in Venice in 1478. And we even have the date here, so the 1478. So it has two copies of the same text. And this one has still has these calendars, but these have a little more information in them. And again, I'm not educated enough to know exactly, but we can see these are year dates and days. And then here we have a calendar, again with the month. So it's another kind of calendar that it looks to me like it almost combines the two types together. So we have the numbers, but we also have the days of the month, and we know that it's January, and here's February, and so on. So there's a question from James. How many quill pens do you think it took to write a manuscript like this? I have absolutely no idea. I think a lot. I mean, I think you could sharpen a quill pen, several times, but eventually it would run out and then you'd have to get out a new one. I really have no idea. I would ask someone who does calligraphy. They might have a better idea. I study them, but I don't write them. And I think there's knowledge that you can really only get by making, as opposed to studying. That's a great question, though. And then at the end of this calendar, we have phases of the moon, I think. So it's the full moon, but it's associated with dates. Or maybe, you know what, it's probably not phases of the moon. It must be, when the moon covers the sun, what's that called? Eclipses. So it's a table of eclipses and when you can expect to see the eclipses and how full they will be in Germany, right? So it's looking at that as if you're standing in Germany, because if you're in a different place, those eclipses are going to look different. And then, as with the previous one, we again have this table of the horizon and the sun rising. with the nice yellow background, same yellow here. So that's nicely done. All right, and there's another one there, and this goes on for a while. I am going to go ahead and skip ahead. Oh, I did. So the text actually ends, and then there's some empty, there's more, a little more diagram there. And then there are more empty pages that have been filled in. And I thought this was fun because there's actually a date. We actually get a date on this one, 1582. So that if we want to think that it's the same person, the same maybe child who made the drawings at the start, to remind you, I just think those are delightful. Then maybe 1582. So it's 100 years, 100 years after, which is pretty neat. And then there's more of these Penn trials. I keep saying Penn trials. If you don't know, a Penn trial is when you sharpen your quill or you get a new pen and you want to make sure that it's working. It's like when you get a ballpoint pen and you like scribble it to make sure the ballpoint is working. It's the same thing. There's a little alphabet, Penn trial. Let's see. All right, so our next tab is here. And now we're moving from what we would think of as the scientific, so the measuring things and the tables with numbers and looking at the eclipses and figuring out when they're going to be and what they're going to look like, to the not so scientific. So this is where we're getting to the zodiac. And it is actually interesting that they also divided it up. So from now on out, it's zodiac stuff. This is on the 12 signs of the zodiac and their influence on people. So it's not just the signs, it's the signs and, oh, I skipped ahead, sorry. This is actually moon and solar calendar for the Diocese of Augsburg. So sorry, I skipped a section. So here's more calendars, incomplete though. So you can see this side has been filled in. We have dates, we have January, or months, January, February, but I think incomplete. There's only some numbers that have been put in here, but not fully. So Augsburg, which is a city in Germany. So again, the astrological information could be very, could be localized. And I do find it really impressive that they had the mathematical knowledge and skill to be able to do this and the astronomical skill to be able to do this. But then there's the zodiac. So here we are on the 12 signs of the zodiac on their influence on people. And this is great because we get these rondelles with the little drawings of the zodiac signs. So the idea is if you're born under a sign or if you are influenced with the sign, like there's a way that the zodiac signs interact with each other over the course of the year. You have your, oh gosh, what you're like your sun sign and then your moon sign, and then there's something else. But they believed that these signs, in fact, had an influence on how you were as a person. And it even went back to your, to when you were in the womb and when you were being formed, because the zodiac signs also have an influence on that. Several months ago, we looked at a text. I actually read some of it that talked about that in some detail. I thought it was really interesting. And now we have January. All right, so that's the signs of the zodiac. Yes, Ellen says earth and fire. Yeah, exactly. Like it influences your temperament, which will come up again in a moment. So now we get to the section that is the influence of the months on people. So you have the zodiac signs and then you have the months. So, January's child is, I don't know what, January, February, March. So not very long, just a little bit. And it looks like there's room for large initials that were never put in. All right. And this goes on for quite a while. So we have these short sections, and then there's this larger section that goes on for about 20 pages or 20 folios, which is 40 pages, which I suppose has more detail in it. As far as I know, this text hasn't been sort of identified as being by any particular person, and it hasn't been translated. I don't know. It is probably a known text. We just haven't identified it. But that might be interesting work if anyone on the call is into that. All right. Now, again, we're back to zodiac. And this is on the 35 zodiac signs, according to Michael Scott. So Michael Scott was a 13th century astrologer. He was born in Scotland, but ended up, I think, going to Persia and being active there. And so this is a copy of a text that he wrote. And again, we have these nice rondelles. Sadly, once we get to this point, this is where the book has really seen a lot of abuse. So you can see there's some pages that have been ripped out here, whole pages. And then anywhere you see a blank, it's where somebody cut it out. And a conservator has come in with paper and fixed it. And so unfortunately, what this means is that somebody just wanted this one, but then it ends up cutting into this one as well, which is a little sad. But these are fun. We've got looks like a goose. I don't know what all these constellations are. Here's like a fish with a man's head, which is sort of interesting. Ship. I don't know what that is. It almost looks like a manicule. You know what? I haven't done this yet. I moved to this room and now I can zoom in. I can like zoom down. So I'm going to zoom down and see if we can see that little manicule. There we go. I'm not sure I'm still not convinced that's a man. A manicule is like a little drawing of a hand that points. So there we go. Let's see. More of these, and then this text, there's a new text here. It didn't get its own little tab. I don't know why. If maybe there was a tab and it came apart. I don't think so, because these two tabs are right. You can't see that. These two tabs are spaced. So I think they just missed a tab, or maybe it was copied from the same manuscript and the person who copied it didn't note it was the same. It was two different texts. I don't know. It's really hard to say. We know that the three texts from incunables, were probably copied from the books in front of them, but it's hard to say how the other ones were copied. How they came to the person who copied them. But this next section is on the 7 planets. So we've looked at the zodiac, we've looked at the months, and now we're looking at the planets. And in other books that we have, the way that these planet drawings work is you have a planet that controls different zodiac signs. And so in the other ones that we have, you have a figure representing a planet with the 2 zodiac signs under their feet. And those are all the ones that I'm thinking of are also German manuscripts. LJS 463 and LJS 499 are those manuscripts I'm thinking of. Unfortunately, they have every single one of them has been cut out of this book, which makes me very sad. Here's a whole, I assume that there was one on one side and one on the other side, and the whole thing is gone, which is a shame, actually. Let's see. So that was that. All right. And then we come to the this text also doesn't have its own tab, which is sort of interesting. This is on the 4 temperaments, which is related to Ellen earlier in the chat said earth and fire. So the 4 temperaments are choleric, melancholic, phlegmatic, and sanguine. And now we're getting into almost medicine. So it was believed that the key to good health, believed at this time, sort of through the Middle Ages, that the key to good health was balancing your humors. And your humors, I can never remember exactly. There's yellow bile and black bile and 2 other ones, blood, and I don't even think blood is one of them. Someday I will remember this, I apologize. But when you balance your humors, then your temperaments are also in balance. But this little section is about, I think that's choleric, and it's just this one. I guess it's just 4 of them here. So just this one page. And then again, we have blank pages, and it looks like these ones haven't been filled in as much as the other ones have. Nobody is asking blood and phlegm. Thank you, phlegm. Why do I forget phlegm? Bran, thank you. Black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm are the 4 humors. So there are these blank pages. I believe that the blank pages are here because I am guessing that this book was written in a blank book. So earlier in the Middle Ages, you would take sheets and sort of make your own book, and you might copy, most likely, you would actually copy the book out when the book was in pieces called quires. And then you'd put them together. And so in books like that, you have things like catchwords and signature numbers. So you number the quires. So the person who binds them knows what order to put them in. I think that this book is late enough that it was sold as maybe a whole piece or sections, larger sections, multiple quires together, and then were sort of later bound together. But what this is the last bit of paper that was in the section that just didn't get written. And so we have it here. And then people, oh, here's a nice manicule. This is later. This is quite a bit later. But they seem to be pointing over here. And this is more medical or like health. A regimen for good health is this section. So if you want to know how to take care of yourself, you could read this and it would tell you all about it. It probably includes things like eat a well-balanced diet and exercise, because even at this time, people kind of knew that was what you did to be healthy. And then the last thing is the table of regions. I Googled this to see if I could figure out what might be happening here, and I don't know. What I can tell you is there's city names. So there's Magdeburg. I just saw Nuremberg here, Prague. So there's cities, and then there's columns with either A or M on the first column, and then there's H, M with numbers, whatever H and M are, and then this G number. I don't know what that is, but I'm assuming it has something to do with astronomy, something, I don't know. And that's the end. And then it ends with several more blank pages. And then in the back, we have another paste down. Remember that front paste down that left the mark. Here we have another example of, it would have been an earlier document that was just sort of used as scrap. And that's missing now, but we can still see what it was because it's here. And that's it. That is all of it. I can't believe we got through that. That was pretty fun. If there are any more questions, I or Amy, we'd be happy to answer. And if not, you're all very quiet. That's fine. We will say goodbye. And I hope you can come next week because that is going to be very exciting. The MS Roll 1066 is 36 feet long. And so we're going to have a special kind of setup in the room upstairs. So I hope you can make it. And have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you soon.